Newspaper of Record now set down, and she explodes with power once again. Newspaper of Record's not home free. Cambier Park has run by Newspaper of Record to win the Wonder again. Concrete Rose strikes the front.
Concrete Rose runs by the top two.
Dominando Concrete Rose con Julián de Pardo. Segundo ha quedado Jody Concrete Rose.
Concrete Rose, a 5-length lead in the blink of an eye.
Concrete Rose romps in the Belmont Oaks.
Concrete Rose wins it.
Stop the presses. This is one fabulous, fabulous filly.
What many people thought was the co-feature of this Stars and Stripes Racing Festival was the Belmont Oaks, but my belief was that this was the feature race on the 11-race card, and it certainly lived up to that billing. What a spectacular performance by a fantastic horse who has an opportunity to make a stamp herself to be one of those horses you're going to be talking about for a long time. Her name is Concrete Rose. She was able to win this Belmont Oaks in convincing and comprehensive style, winning by 2 3/4 lengths in 159.97 for the 1 1/4. That was actually 2 ticks better than the winning time for the Suburban Handicap, even though it was on the lawn, and you can maybe dissect the pace scenario and how turf races run in comparison to dirt races. But she was fantastic in this race, stalked beautifully, forwardly placed, stalking the Japanese entrant Jody, who ran very, very well, by the way. Concrete Rose, and winning by 2 3/4 lengths, finished ahead of Aidan O'Brien's Just Wonderful, who did just that, ran a very, very nice race. And Cambier Park, who had defeated Newspaper of Record, the much ballyhooed 2-year-old turf queen, or the queen of the 2-year-old juvenile turf in 2018. She finished third. And the margins, of course, Just Wonderful was a nose in front of Cambier Park, and she was 2 lengths in front of Jody, who ran very, very well and courageously on the front end. Newspaper of Record finished 9th and last in this race, as you see the order of finish there. And all I can say is that there's a couple things going on here. She won her 3 graded races, including the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, on soft going, with the juvenile turf being extremely heavy going. And I think that even though she had to compete on it too and handle it extremely well with those 2 prior races, really kind of preparing her for the worst, I think that getting on a level playing field, horses maturing as 3-year-olds, added distance, different varying racetracks, is going to really tell the tale as to how a 2-year-old champion is going, or a 2-year-old superstar is going to perform, and where it puts him or her as a 3-year-old. And I think what happened when the playing field got level, you couple the layoff that she had going all the way up into Derby weekend, which was an emboldened move by Chad Brown to wait until Derby weekend to run against the likes of Concrete Rose at Churchill on the Derby Day Festival, or the Derby Weekend Festival. Again, she still had another race after losing the Edgewood to Concrete Rose. She lost the Wonder Again Stakes in what was a brilliant race. 146.34 was the final time. Legitimate fractions, got caught by Cambier Park. And for those who believe that when a horse comes back off a long layoff, by the time you get to a 3rd race, they should be peaking. Any chance for that to happen at distances that some people have had a question about, not only with Newspaper Record, but for every horse in here. But I think some believe that Newspaper Record's pedigree might be a little light on once we started, adding distance. Any chance she had to get the 1 1/4 was compromised. Anytime you see a horse, a rider standing almost straight up in the stirrups, and a horse's head, almost, pointing to the sky, short of a horse breaking down or having an injury where they have to be pulled up, this is not the ideal scenario you want in terms of trying to rate your horse. The best option would have been, and she also impeded horses on the backside, wiping Coral Beach out and a couple others. The problem in here is she contended mildly or briefly on the turn, looked like she was going to make a race of it, but you got to believe that early going of the race, the first mile or so, really compromised her. If she had been allowed to run out of there and then perhaps been chirped to possibly do a little rating, she may have been resistant to that, but the chances of her being more receptive to being handled that way would have probably, I wouldn't say it would have changed the outcome any more than what happened in the Breeders' Cup. If you couldn't handle the off going, it was going to hurt your chances. she probably would have hit the board if she had been ridden differently. This was not Irad Ortiz's shining moment as a rider in here. I think a lot of people, this was a lot like what happened with Javier Castellano on Hidden Scroll. The same ball game of just being, too wrapped up and bottled up in the early going. You got to let a horse, especially coming out of the number 2 hole, run out of there. And if it puts her on the lead, it puts her on the lead. And you hope and pray that they don't go too fast, or that regardless of whether it's a perfect scenario or not, they can go 1.25 miles. So I think that whether you're a newspaper record fan or not, she definitely wasn't, ridden in a way in which was going to give her any chance to really be legitimate in this race. But Concrete Rose was fantastic. I've been high on this horse. If you go back to the Breeders' Cup podcast, I thought she was as good as Newspaper Record. She was my pick. I really thought she would run big there, and so I was kind of waiting to see if she would redeem herself. She did that in the Edgewood Stakes. I did say in the preview podcast I wasn't supremely overconfident, because you still got to deal with 1.25 miles, but off her run at Churchill Downs, that's why she was my pick. If you go back to my scenario, she was my final win pick. The 4, the 9, the 1, and the 5. The 4 being Concrete Rose, the 9 being Cambier Park, who did finish 3rd. The number 1, of course, Olindon, the French entry, she did not run very, very well. And the number 5, of course, Cafe Americano, who finished mid-pack. So, again, luckily I was able to pick a winner out of all these festival races. I didn't make many picks, but I was glad to do well on the 2 co-features and win with a horse that I really, really like. And that begs the question for Concrete Rose. Is she a genuine risk, or a go for one, a Zarkava or a Zenyatta?
In the Belmont Oaks Invitational.
Concrete Rose.
El comando aminando Conquer Rosa.
Concrete Rose, a 5-length lead in the blink of an eye.
Concrete Rose strikes the front.
So, Concrete Rose was absolutely devastating in this race, and she's in tremendous form. She's the most exciting horse in training in North America right now, certainly arguably one of the ones you just look forward to seeing. She's going to get her opportunity to win leg 2 of the Triple Tiara series at Saratoga, at the Saratoga Oaks, which of course is going to also be co-featured with, of course, like the Belmont Derby, the Saratoga Derby, I believe. That's going to be the second leg of the Trinity series. And so that's going to be very, very exciting. And I think a lot of people were really curious. It probably isn't a short-term thought, may not end up being at the head of the thinking in terms of the team of Concrete Rose to maybe switch surfaces and run her on the dirt. I think right now these Grade 1 races are suiting her just fine. She's certainly shown an affinity for the added distance. The key is going to be if she can hold her form and do this one more time. And if she continues to go in this path, is she going to be the next Shuvi or Serena Song, or the next Ruffian or Rachel Alexandra, or Bayako or Basra Sham, or Bold and Determined, or the next Genuine Risk or Go for One, or is she another Zenyatta or Zarkava? So, or Zarkava, however you want to pronounce that. Is she of that kind of, is she cut from that kind of cloth? Does she breathe that kind of air? And so she's running up on an opportunity to be, possibly a future superstar, or, a superstar in the next few weeks, and maybe end up having her image and likeness enshrined in the Racing Hall of Fame. So she is a horse heading in that direction. There's a long way to go, but she's a fantastic horse. I loved her going into the Breeders' Cup. She wasn't able to prove that she was as good as Newspaper Record, and for a long time I think a lot of people believed off that win on the off-going that Newspaper Record showed that she could handle the worst, and that it could only get better on lightning fast or certainly fair racing surfaces, and that has not occurred. That gap has been, not only has the gap shrunk, but now the tables have been completely turned on her. But I will, in her defense, say that she was ridden poorly in this race. She was wrangled back too far. Sure, she probably didn't want to get in a speed duel, but usually turf races don't lend themselves to that. She should have been allowed to show her natural speed and see where it put her in the race, and then hope and pray that she could be relaxed enough. And had they gone that route and tried to relax her that way, she still may have been resistant to it, but she would have had a much better chance to finish on the board. I don't think this is a death sentence on her in terms of her ability to go a route of ground. It is, could be very well true that the 1 1/8 1/4 doesn't suit her as well, but you can best bet if there's any rain, certainly her odds are going to drop a little bit. She's going to get a price now, no matter whether the going is soft or not. We know how good she is on that. Certainly Chad Brown's going to probably, whether they consider on staying on this trail or not, or they put her in one-turn races races. I believe she can still go a route of ground if ridden properly. I think this was the wrong day on the third race cycle off a long layoff for her to be, trying, for them to completely try to take her out of her sort of stalk and pounce style or front running, way of going. So I think that was a mistake, and it certainly helped Concrete Rose, who did exactly what she's always been known to do, and that is show the tactics, be able to show front running speed, and then sit back off of horses that are more ambitious on getting the lead in the early going, and then wait to pounce and make that move, and then show that tremendous turn of foot and that explosion that she showed in the stretch, once again posting a beautiful time of 1:59.97 for the mile and a quarter. That's racehorse time. That's supersonic stuff, folks, and she's a fantastic horse, and I can't wait to see her run again. Once again, Concrete Rose, the daughter of Twirling Candy, wins the 2019 Belmont Oaks.
Cafe Americano comes wide. They're into the stretch, and it's Jody still there. Concrete Rose runs up alongside at the gate pole. Newspaper of Record did not go on. Concrete Rose strikes the front. Jody is back into second, and finishing fast is Just Wonderful down the outside. Canberra Park is moving with her, but it is Concrete Rose. Concrete Rose romps in the Belmont Oaks. She won it by 4 lengths over Just Wonderful, and then it was Canberra Park and Jody in a final time of 1:59.97 seconds.
Concrete Rose va dominando el comando, va dominando Concrete Rose con Julian de Parora.
Concrete Rose wins it.
Concrete Rose romps in the Belmont Oaks.
Concrete Rose